Here's a look at my top 15 defensive centers so far this season. First up, we have Ivica Zubac. When Zubac is on the court, the Clippers' defensive rating is 105.2. When he's off, it's 109.9. In the restricted area specifically, opponents are shooting just 56.6% with him as the nearest defender, which ranks 6th among the 31 players who have defended at least 100 shots from this short distance. Also, maybe surprising to some considering his frame, but he's done an excellent job guarding in space and in one-on-one situations. Opponents are 16 of 55 in isolation against Zubac. That's just 29%, which ranks 2nd among all qualified centers. Next is Donovan Clingan. Per 36 minutes, Clingan is averaging the 2nd most blocks. In a game against Minnesota on November 13th, he had 8 blocks. That was the 12th time since 2000 that a rookie recorded at least 8 blocks in a game. When he's on the court, Portland's defensive rating is 111.7, and when he's off, it's 117.7. Also, per 100 possessions, opponents are averaging 43.8 points in the paint when he's on the floor and 48.6 when he's off. Another rookie, Alex Sarr. Even though the Wizards are 29th in defense, Sarr has shown some impressive flashes of what he can be defensively. He's been pretty good as the switch defender in pick and rolls. Ball handlers in the pick and roll have shot just 6 of 21, with Sarr defending following a switch. His one-on-one defense has been fairly good, although opponents have shot above average against him so far. Through 24 games, he's blocked 43 shots, which is 7th most in the league. His length is a big factor when guarding on the perimeter, as opponents have shot just 29.6% from three-point distance, with him contesting on 98 attempts. Among the 20 centers who have contested at least 75 three-pointers, that mark ranks 3rd. Next is Goga Bitadze. Goga has really turned his career around in Orlando, and he's been the interior anchor to the Magic's remarkably good defense. Across the board, he's been very good on that end. In the restricted semicircle, opponents have shot just 57% with him as the nearest defender, 6th lowest among the 26 players who have guarded at least 100 shots from this short distance. In isolation, opponents are shooting just 38% against him, another upper tier mark. Through 26 games, he's blocked 42 shots, 8th most in the league. Another impressive thing is that he's given up very few N1s. Opponents are just 4 of 25 when getting fouled by Goga, which for a center is an above average mark. The Magic as a team are tied for 2nd in opponent points in the paint and are number 1 in opponent second chance points. Moving on to Isaiah Stewart. It's going under the radar a bit, but Stewart has evolved into a very impressive defender. Statistically speaking, he probably should be higher on this list. Among those who have been the nearest defender to at least 300 shots, he ranks number 1 in defensive QSQ, which is a formula created by Second Spectrum that measures shot quality based around things such as shot location, distance and type, contest level, and number of defenders nearby. So basically, Stewart is forcing opponents into tough shots. Also, opponents are shooting just 41% with him as the closest defender, which ranks 4th among the 57 players who have guarded at least 300 shots. In the paint specifically, opponents are shooting just 43% against him, which ranks number 1 in the league. Another thing about him is that opponents rarely beat him off the dribble on drives. His defensive blow-by percentage is just 9.7%, which ranks number 2. Next, we have Jarrett Allen. Allen has switched on to a ball handler in the pick and roll the 2nd most times in the league, and opponents have taken the most shots against him in these situations. They've made just 11 of their 42 attempts, which is 26.2%. One thing that is striking though is that when Allen is on the court, opponents of the Cavs have shot 40% from three-point range. When he's off, they've shot just 33% from downtown. Also, when he's on the court, Cleveland's defensive rating is 112.8, and when he's off, it's 101.8. So those are not favorable marks. Nonetheless, the Cavs rank 5th in opponent points in the paint. Another thing about Allen is that he rarely commits fouls, averaging just 1.2 of them per game, which ranks number 1 among regular starting centers. Here's Walker Kessler. Kessler is a tough player to grade because the Jazz have the worst defense in the league, and when he's off the floor, they actually have a better defensive rating than when he's on it, 116.7 compared to 120.1, but his individual defensive numbers are great. Opponents are shooting just 41.2% with him as the nearest defender. Of the 18 players who have guarded at least 400 shots, that ranks number 1. Of the 26 players who have guarded at least 100 shots in the restricted area, he has the second best defensive field goal percentage. He's second in blocks with 64 of them, and he doesn't foul all that much, only 2.1 per contest. Moving on to Dereck Lively II. Lively has a blend of skills on the defensive end. He's a very good rim protector, he's great in drop coverage, he moves his feet well laterally, and he's one of the better centers defending against smaller, quicker players. Also big is that he is relentless contesting shots. In fact, among the 57 players who have been the nearest defender to at least 300 shots, his 94.9% contest rate ranks number 2. Only Keegan Murray ranks higher. Overall, opponents are shooting just 42.8% with Lively defending, which is a top 20 mark in the league. Next, we have Brook Lopez. Lopez to this point of the season has been the closest defender to more shot attempts than any other player, with opponents shooting 44.6% against him. 70% of the shots he has guarded he has heavily contested, which among the 40 centers who have guarded at least 100 shots is 4th best. Also, opponents have shot just 54.8% against him in the restricted area, 3rd best among centers. He's currently 5th in total blocks with 57 of them, and he's one of only 3 players averaging at least 2 blocks and 1 steal. Moving on to Bam Adebayo. The thing that really pops out about Bam is that opponents respect his defense so much that they try to avoid going at him at all costs. Of all regular starting centers, Bam has been the nearest defender to the fewest shots per 100 possessions. Of the 67 times Adebayo has switched on to a ball handler in the pick and roll, the ball handler has made a pass 50 times. He also ranks 7th in defensive QSQ in isolation situations, and he's in the top 10 in deflections. He's really good getting back in transition as well, as opponents have shot just 48.8% against him when on the run. Another impressive thing is that Bam is rarely in foul trouble. Only once this season so far has he picked up 5 fouls, and 11 times he's only committed 1. And he's exceptional defending in the zone, which the Heat do more than every other team. Here's Rudy Gobert. When Gobert is on the court, only 22% of the shots opponents take against the Wolves are in the restricted area. When he's off, 30% of the shots opponents take are in that region. To take it a step further, when he's on the floor, Minnesota is only giving up 44.8 points in the paint per 100 possessions. When he's off, that skyrockets to a team worst 54.6 points per 100 possessions. Gobert's presence is game-changing, which is why he's a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year. Over the last 10 games, the T-Wolves have the 2nd best defensive rating. Now, Jaren Jackson Jr. Among centers, Jackson is 3rd in deflections and 1st in recovering defensive loose balls. When he's on the court, the Grizzlies have a defensive rating of 104.0, and when he's off, it's 108.1. In isolation situations, opponents are shooting just 41.9% against Jackson. Even more impressive is when he's guarding the drive. In fact, opponents have made just 11 of their 42 shot attempts on drives with Jackson defending. That 26.2% mark ranks number 1 among the 213 players who have guarded at least 40 shots on drives. An interesting stat too is that Memphis has outscored its opponents by 217 when Jackson has been on the floor, which is 3rd best behind Evan Mobley and Alperen Şengün. Next is Anthony Davis. AD is one of 18 players that has defended at least 400 shots so far, and among them he ranks 4th in defensive field goal percentage, with opponents shooting 43.8% against him. 56 of the shots taken by opponents with him guarding have come in isolation, and they've made just 18 of them, which is 32%. That mark ranks number 2 among the 15 players who have guarded at least 50 isolation shots. AD is also 4th in total blocks and top 30 in deflections. Surprising though is that the Lakers have been outscored by 30 when AD has been on the court. That's unsuspecting for a player of his caliber on a team that is 17-13. I was back and forth on whether to include Chet Holmgren on this list, considering he's only played in 10 games and will be out for at least another few weeks with his injury. But I just couldn't leave him off because we all know how good of a defender he is. Nobody was guarding the basket better than Chet before the injury. In fact, in the restricted area, opponents were shooting just 44% with Holmgren defending. That still ranks number 1. Also, in those 10 games, opponents of OKC shot just 40.2% from the field when Chet was on the court. When he was off the floor in those games, they shot 43.4%. And finally, Victor Wembanyama. Of all the individual award races, this one seems like it's pretty much over, barring injury of course. Wemby has been exactly as advertised. Every single defensive stat, he now is near or at the top of the leaderboard. Just some examples. Opponents are shooting just 38.6% with Wemby contesting, which ranks number 1 among centers with at least 200 contests. In the restricted area, it's 43.9%, number 1 among all players with at least 100 contests from this region. When he's in the game, only 43% of opponent shots are in the paint, and when he's out of the game, it's a shade under 50%. Currently leading the league with 4 blocks per contest, the last time a player averaged at least that many in an entire season was in 1995-96, when Dikembe Mutombo averaged 4.5. So that'll wrap up this video. If you like this kind of content, please subscribe.